Okay, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak at this very important meeting. Um, Speaking about the recent implementation of U.S. interagency strategic plans. So next slide. I wanted to give you some background on the various groups that are involved with developing the plan and implementing the interagency strategic plans. My group is the National Toxicology Program Interagency Center for the Evaluation of Alternative Toxicological Methods, also known as NICETM. Next slide. So this is a picture of my group. Over on the right-hand side, we have about 18 people. We are located in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina, and we are part of the National Institutes of Health, NIH, and specifically we're part of the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. Next slide. Just to give you an idea of where we are located in beautiful North Carolina, which is on the east coast of the United States. We have beautiful mountains and beautiful beaches, so if you ever have an opportunity, please let me know and we'd love to arrange to have you visit us. Next slide. So the committee that my group supports is called the Interagency Coordinating Committee on the Validation of Alternative Methods, ICVAM. This is a committee composed of 16 U.S. federal agencies, which have some type of requirement or use of toxicity testing. So the major ones you are probably aware of are the Food and Drug Administration, the EPA, maybe Consumer Products Safety Commission, Department of Defense. These are the major agencies that participate in ICVAM, although we, like I said, we do have 16 agencies. Each of those agencies has a representative on the committee. The committee has no budget. The committee is voluntary, so agencies do not have to participate. And the committee has no authority. So without a budget and without authority, you may think it's very difficult to get things done, and sometimes it is, but the committee has proven to be very effective, especially in the past few years, because they've realized that working together, they can actually achieve much more than they could working by themselves as individual agencies. So next slide. And so the relationship is that my group, NICETM, is paid for by NIH. We have a budget of about $5 million a year, and our job is to support the activities of ICVAM. And that can be activities of the entire committee, or it can also be supporting activities of a specific agency. We work very closely, for example, with the U.S. EPA, Office of Pesticides, to help them develop new approaches. But we also work with a number of different interagency groups, so more than one agency involved in a project. So we do individual agency support and the entire committee support. Next slide. So about 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, we changed the direction of ICVAM. We realized it was not being very effective. The agencies were not cooperating very well. Validation took too long. So we took about 3 years to try to understand where all the problems were. And we put together this strategic roadmap. It's a very short document. The roadmap itself is only about 8 pages. It's very simple, but it's proven to be a very effective and powerful tool that's helped us get a lot done, both in the United States and internationally. We have translated the roadmap into 5 different languages, including Korean, at the suggestion of our friends in Humane Society. So we thank them for giving us that idea, and it has been very well received. So next slide. So the principle of the roadmap can be explained with this diagram, which is the circular, the interrelationship of these 3 different pieces of the puzzle. Next slide. What we found was that methods were being developed and validated, but never used. Either agencies would not accept them, or industry stakeholders did not find them to be useful, so they wouldn't use them. So our goal is to encourage the adoption of new methods. Anything we work on, we want to make sure it is ultimately accepted by regulators and used by industry. And the key we found to getting that done is to make sure that the people that are going to use the method, so the industry and regulators, have got to be involved at the very beginning of the technology development. We can't wait until after methods are developed and validated to get regulators involved. So if we can get the regulators involved early, that will almost guarantee success later on. And then we need to find ways to make validation efficient and flexible so it doesn't take so long and is not so expensive. So if we can do all of these things, if we can get the end users involved early and we can make validation efficient and flexible, then we can almost guarantee that the methods are going to be used at the end. Next slide. One of the most important aspects that we came to realize is that there were there's a lot of responsibility on the federal agencies, that they had not been doing everything they needed to do to help develop and validate methods. And probably the most important thing we've learned is that agencies have to be very clear to identify what they require. It may sound very easy, but it's actually very difficult to try to understand what specifically an agency needs and what they will accept in terms of an alternative method. So having those conversations with the agencies and having the agencies actually write down in a publication what they expect is the most important part of all of this. And right now we're focusing on the 6 most commonly used toxicity tests called the 6-pack. So these 6 toxicity tests are used by many agencies in the US and around the world. And we're going through each one of those and having agencies identify their specific needs. So next slide. So this is an example of publications related to that. So every one of these tests, we have gotten agencies to explain in great detail exactly what their requirements are. And as I said, this sounds very simple, but it takes us almost a year to understand these requirements and get them down in writing. Even as close as we work with the agencies, it still takes us a year to get this information from them. Next slide. The other important part is that agencies have to be very clear about what they expect during a validation process and whether or not they will accept a method after it has been validated. Here in the United States, we have a lot of problems with agencies not specifically saying what they expect. So we have to kind of guess, and often we don't guess correctly, which leads to them not accepting the method. We also had a lot of problems with agencies not actually saying whether or not they would accept a method. They would say, you can submit it, but we're not going to guarantee we'll accept it. That does not work good for industry. So we need agencies to step up and to say, yes, we will accept this method before industry will actually start using it. Next slide. And the agencies have been very, very good about doing that over the past couple of years. We have the EPA and the FDA especially have started a series of publications outlining exactly what they expect and what they will accept. So all of these are now out in the public. Next slide. And we have an example here of the EPA Office of Pesticides specifically saying we will accept this test method. And this was really something new. This was unheard of 5 years ago. They simply would not say very much and try, hope industry would submit some tests and then they would try to get comfortable and then they might later say, okay, we'll accept it. In this case, the EPA has come out and said we will accept it even before OECD, even before people had started submitting tests to them. So this is a new way of doing things that makes test method development a lot easier and a lot more efficient. Next slide. Again, this is just another example of the EPA coming out and saying they will accept certain tests. Next slide. The other thing that agencies really have to do is promote international harmonization. We recognize that it doesn't matter if the US EPA or FDA accepts a method. If it's not accepted in Korea, Japan, Europe, industry will not use the new method. They will always use the older method that meets the requirements of everybody, as opposed to having to do a new method and an old method to meet two different markets. So without international harmonization, much of our work is not going to gain traction. So we are really focused on trying to help facilitate all markets accepting the same tests. Next slide. And so part of doing that, a very important part of that international collaboration is this International Cooperation on Alternative Test Methods, ICATM. We now have 7 members. Korea was one of the very first and is certainly one of the most important members in ICATM. And it's a place that we can come together and try to cooperate and harmonize validation studies, talk about how peer review is done, and develop harmonized test methods and recommendations that will be accepted across the world. We're starting to see ICATM as something that's even more important than OECD. It used to be OECD was the place to go, and still is the place to go to gain international acceptance. But by going through ICATM, we have very powerful countries here. And if we can get these countries to agree that a certain way is the right way to do things, to validate a certain method and get it accepted, then there's a very good chance that OECD will accept it. So we see ICATM as a very important first step to getting international acceptance. Next slide. So as I said, these are the tests that we are focused on right now. The 6-pack, the acute oral lethality, the LD50, the acute dermal inhalation, eye irritation, skin irritation, and skin sensitization. And I was just up at the EPA in Washington, D.C. this morning, and we were laying out our strategy for how long it will take to get this done. And we feel that we can have all of these completed within 2 years. So I think that's a realistic expectation. Next slide. The other thing we're doing is making our progress on each of these available to the public. So we have a website. If you go to the website and click on any particular test, you can follow the progress of that test and how far it is along the acceptance path. Next slide. I just wanted to mention one tool we have available for the international community, which is a database of high-quality validation studies. It's curated Tox 21 data. There are 10,000 chemicals and 700 assays, and a wide variety of other tools that are very useful to the test method developers around the world.